The morning sun over Coronado Bay cut through the mist like a blade. The Navy training grounds were alive with motion boots striking pavement, whistles piercing the air, instructors barking orders sharp enough to draw blood. Amid that chaos stood Lieutenant Rachel Dawson, her frame lean but steady, her eyes locked forward, jaw tight. Around her were 22 male candidates, all taller, broader, louder. No one said a word to her, but their silence said everything. She could feel it in their stares, the disbelief, the quiet resentment. To them, she wasn't a teammate. She was an intrusion. "All right, recruits." Chief Instructor Harris barked, his voice booming across the field. "Welcome to the toughest 12 weeks of your miserable lives. You think you're special? You're not. Not yet. You'll either bleed together, or you'll ring the bell and go home." A heavy brass bell stood on a wooden post near the sand. It gleamed under the morning sun, an invitation for surrender. Every trainee knew what it meant. 3 rings, and your dream was over. Rachel's gaze lingered on it for half a second. Then she looked away. The whistle blew, and the first test began. Push-ups in the sand until the body trembled, burpees under the California sun, and 200-meter sprints with 50-pound packs. It wasn't training. It was controlled punishment. Within minutes, sweat streamed into Rachel's eyes, stinging like fire. She pushed through, muscles screaming. Around her, the men grunted, cursed, and gasped for air. Some glanced at her, expecting to see her falter. She didn't. Harris walked past, his shadow falling over her. "Lieutenant Dawson," he said, not slowing down, "you planning to keep up with the boys, or prove a point?" Rachel's voice came low but steady. "Sir, I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here to qualify." A few men smirked. One of them, Sergeant Blake Renner, let out a mocking laugh. He was tall, square-jawed, the kind of man who'd been strong his whole life and knew it. "Qualify?" he said under his breath. "You'll be lucky to last a week." Rachel ignored him. She had heard worse. By noon, the sun was merciless. The sand burned through their uniforms as they crawled under barbed wire, lungs full of grit. Rachel's arms shook, her vision blurring from dehydration. She reached the end of the crawl, hands bloodied, but she didn't stop. When the whistle blew again, they had 5 minutes to grab food before the next drill boat carries. 5 minutes wasn't enough. Rachel gulped water, ate a bite of an energy bar, and shouldered one end of a rubber raft with 3 others. Blake was on the opposite side, sneering. "Lighten your end, Lieutenant," he said. "You're dragging." "I'm carrying my share," she shot back. He snorted. "Then carry faster." The team stumbled through the sand, struggling to lift the boat above their heads. Every step was a war. The instructors shouted for more speed. Sweat poured into Rachel's mouth, tasting like salt and metal. At one point, her leg buckled. The raft slipped slightly. Blake smirked. "Told you." But Rachel gritted her teeth and lifted again. "You'll have to do better than that," she muttered. Harris watched from a distance, arms crossed. He didn't interfere, but Rachel could sense he was measuring her studying whether she'd last another hour. She did. By evening, the trainees were sent into the ocean for surf torture. They locked arms, half submerged in freezing waves, as instructors shouted over the roar. The Pacific water bit into their skin like knives. "Think it's cold, Dawson?" Blake taunted. Rachel clenched her jaw. "Feels like home." He laughed. "Where the hell are you from, Antarctica?" "Chicago," she said through chattering teeth. "Colder attitude." The man beside her chuckled quietly before the next wave crashed over them. For a brief second, the hostility around her softened. When the whistle blew to end the session, Rachel could barely move her legs. They stumbled back to camp under a gray dusk sky, dripping and shaking. That night, inside the barracks, Rachel collapsed onto her bunk. Her uniform was soaked, her skin raw, her muscles in revolt. Around her, the men talked quietly, some joking, others cursing. She pulled out a small, worn photo from her pocket, a man in a Navy SEAL uniform, smiling beneath a desert sun. Her older brother, Ethan Dawson. Killed in action, Afghanistan, 2018. She ran a thumb over the faded image. "You don't have to be the strongest," he had told her once. "Just be the one who never stays down." She folded the photo and slipped it back into her pocket. The door slammed open. Chief Harris entered. "Listen up. Tomorrow's assessment will separate those who belong here from those who don't. You'll run, crawl, and swim until your bodies give out. Anyone rings that bell, no shame in it, but if you quit, quit with your head high." Rachel didn't move, didn't blink. As lights went out, whispers rose. Some bets were made, how long before she quit, how far before she broke. Blake's voice carried above the rest. "She won't last 3 more days," he said confidently. Rachel rolled onto her side, eyes open in the dark. 3 days, she thought. We'll see. The next morning came like an ambush. Before dawn, the instructors kicked open the barrack doors and dragged them into the cold. Rain had started to fall, turning the sand into thick sludge. "Move, move, move," Harris roared. The run began. 12 miles full gear. Rachel's body screamed for mercy after the first mile. Her boots sloshed through puddles. The backpack cut into her shoulders. The rain blurred her vision, but she kept her gaze on the candidate ahead of her. At mile 6, someone slipped. At mile 8, someone quit. At mile 10, her body begged her to stop. She didn't. Her lungs felt like fire, her legs like stone. She thought of Ethan again, his laugh, his strength, his belief in her. She remembered the folded flag they'd handed her at his funeral. By the time she crossed the finish line, she was dead last, but she finished. As she bent over, hands on knees, she heard a few slow claps. Harris stood near the bell, watching her. "Lieutenant Dawson," he said evenly, "you barely made it." Rachel straightened, her breath ragged. "Still made it, sir." He nodded once, expression unreadable. "We'll see if you still have that attitude after L Week." Blake snorted from the sidelines. "Won't make it that far." Rachel's lips curved slightly. "You seem real interested in my schedule, Sergeant." Laughter rippled through the group, brief but genuine. For the first time, the balance shifted. That night, as the camp lights dimmed, Rachel sat outside on the sand. The waves crashed against the shore, the air cold and wet. She stared toward the horizon, where the ocean met the dark, endless sky. Every instinct told her this was only the beginning. The real pain hadn't started yet. The worst was coming. But so was her chance. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a quiet smile. She wasn't here to be liked. She was here to win. And she would one brutal day at a time. The week everyone feared arrived like a storm with no mercy. Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training. No sleep, little food, constant punishment. The kind of exhaustion that turned men into ghosts. At dawn, the air was thick with mist and the scent of salt. Waves crashed against the beach as candidates stood in formation, trembling slightly from the cold. The instructors moved down the line, their boots crunching the wet sand. Chief Harris stopped in front of Rachel Dawson. "You ready, Lieutenant?" Her throat was dry, her eyes red from lack of rest, but her answer came steady. "Yes, sir." He stared at her for a moment, expression unreadable. "You'd better be. This week separates warriors from wannabes." The whistle blew, sharp as a knife. "Get in the water!" The entire class rushed forward into the freezing Pacific. The first wave hit like ice shards. Rachel gasped, her body seizing from the shock. The men around her cursed, teeth chattering, arms locking as they formed a human chain. "Lock arms." "Sing, damn it," yelled one instructor. They sang, hoarse, trembling voices carried away by the wind. The surf slammed into their faces again and again. Minutes felt like hours. The ocean didn't care who they were, only who could endure it. When they stumbled out of the water, soaked and shaking, the next drill began immediately. Log carries. 6 men per team, one giant wooden log above their heads, running up and down the beach until their shoulders went numb. Rachel's group included Blake Renner. He didn't hide his resentment. "Don't fall behind, Dawson," he said through gritted teeth. She met his glare. "Then don't slow me down." The team surged forward, sand flying beneath their boots. The log weighed over 200 pounds. It crushed their rhythm, testing every muscle, every tendon. Rachel's arm screamed in pain. The log dipped slightly on her end, and Blake instantly barked. "Hold it up." "I am," she hissed back. He leaned closer. "Then act like you belong here." Her temper flared, but she bit it down. Anger wasted oxygen, and she needed every breath. The instructors shouted from the dunes, "Faster! You move like old men." By the third repetition, her shoulders felt like they were on fire. The world tilted slightly as dizziness crept in. She blinked through the sweat and salt, forcing her body to obey. The hours blurred together. Ocean plunges, sand crawls, push-ups until muscles failed. Candidates started to drop. At midnight, they were forced back into the surf. The water was black and merciless. Harris walked along the shore, holding a bullhorn. "Who's ready to quit?" No one spoke. He stepped closer, voice rising. "I said, who's ready to quit?" 2 men broke formation, stumbling toward the brass bell. One rang it once, then twice, then 3 times. The bell's echo sliced through the wind. Clang, clang, clang. Rachel swallowed hard. She wanted to scream, cry, sleep, anything but move. But she held her ground. When morning came, her lips were blue, and her fingers barely moved. Her body shook uncontrollably. Blake looked at her, something between irritation and curiosity in his eyes. "You still breathing, Dawson?" "Barely," she rasped. "Could have fooled me." She didn't answer. Words were energy, and energy was survival. The instructors handed out cold MREs. The food tasted like cardboard, but she forced it down. Then came the obstacle course, 10 stations designed to crush what was left of their stamina. Climbing walls, rope swings, cargo nets, tunnels filled with muddy water. Halfway through, disaster struck. Rachel reached for her pack, the one she'd left near the starting line, and froze. It was lighter than before. Too light. She opened it. The weighted sandbag inside was gone. Her heart sank. Someone had tampered with it. Her gaze darted across the field. Blake's smirk confirmed everything. "Something wrong, Lieutenant?" he called mockingly. Rachel clenched her fists. Reporting him would solve nothing. The instructors didn't tolerate excuses. If she finished without full weight, she'd fail. So she improvised. She grabbed 2 extra sandbags from the supply pile, shoved them into her pack, and kept running. The weight doubled, her speed halved, but she refused to stop. By the time she crossed the finish line, she was barely standing. Her uniform clung to her like a second skin, her arms trembling violently. Chief Harris walked up, studying her pack. "You carrying double weight?" "Yes, sir. Why?" She hesitated. To make up for what was missing, sir. He raised an eyebrow, then nodded slightly. That's initiative. Keep that up, Dawson. She didn't look at Blake as she walked past him. But she didn't need to. The flicker of surprise in his eyes was all the victory she needed. That night, Hell Week continued. They were woken every hour by sirens, forced to run or crawl or carry each other through mud. The world narrowed to pain, cold, and breath. By the fourth night, hallucinations set in. Rachel saw shadows moving where there were none, heard her brother's voice whispering through the wind. Don't you dare quit, Ratch. When the instructors ordered a night swim across the bay, her body nearly gave out. The current was strong, dragging her sideways. The lights of the base blurred in the distance. Her arms felt like lead. Then a voice beside her, Blake's. Move, Dawson. Don't stop now. For once, it wasn't mockery. It was raw survival. They reached the shore together, collapsing onto the sand. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to say. By dawn, only 14 candidates remained. Chief Harris stood before them, hands clasped behind his back. His face was calm, but his voice carried quiet respect. If you're still here, you've already proven more than most. But this week's not over yet. You've got 48 more hours. Then we'll see who deserves that uniform. Rachel's body felt broken, her mind fractured by exhaustion. But something deeper had awakened. The whispers had changed. No one was betting on her failure anymore. That afternoon, during a short rest break, Blake walked past her. For the first time, his tone wasn't cruel. You carried double weight yesterday? Yeah, he nodded slowly. Didn't think you'd make it through. I didn't think I'd have to prove it twice. A faint smile tugged at his lips. You proved it, Lieutenant. Before she could respond, Harris shouted orders again. They were headed to the final drill, a 24-hour endurance march. No sleep, no food, just distance and pain. Rachel adjusted her pack, her shoulders raw, her legs trembling. As they began walking into the rising sun, she felt the weight of every hour, every insult, every doubt she'd swallowed. She wasn't just surviving Hell Week, she was rewriting its meaning. Hours later, as the horizon bled red with sunset, she stumbled but didn't fall. Harris rode alongside in a jeep, observing silently. Lieutenant, he called out, what keeps you walking? Rachel's answer came through cracked lips. Because quitting doesn't bring anyone back. He stared at her, eyes narrowing with something like understanding. Then he nodded. When the final whistle blew the next morning, Hell Week was over. Rachel fell to her knees in the sand, shaking, tears mixing with salt water. Around her, the surviving candidates collapsed in exhaustion. Blake dropped beside her, breathing hard. You're crazy, you know that? She managed a weak smile. Maybe, but I'm still here. The sun broke through the clouds, golden and fierce. Chief Harris walked by, glancing at her name badge. Dawson, he said, his voice softer now. That was one hell of a week. Welcome to the next phase. Rachel looked up at the horizon, the wind whipping through her hair. Hell Week hadn't broken her. It had rebuilt her into something stronger than pain, stronger than fear. And deep down, she knew the real battle was still coming. Asterisk. The salt smell of the Pacific was gone now, replaced by the dry sting of dust. The class had been flown east to the Imperial Desert Training Range, a sea of red sand and wind-carved rock where the next phase urban combat simulation would take place. For the first time, Rachel Dawson felt she was standing on ground that could break bones rather than spirits. Chief Harris briefed them beside a cluster of half-collapsed buildings that had once been a movie set. You'll run this as a live tactical exercise. 2 teams. 1 rescues the hostage. 1 defends. No shortcuts, no mercy. We're watching every angle. When he assigned team leaders, his eyes swept the candidates. Renner, pause, Dawson. Blake Renner shot Rachel a hard glance. Both leaders, same mission, opposite sides. As the sun climbed, they studied their maps in silence. Rachel's squad 5 men. 2 of whom still weren't sure they trusted her, waited for orders. She squatted in the sand, drawing with a stick. We go in low through the drainage channel. 2 flank right, 2 left. No open chatter on comms. Use hand signals. One trainee, Keller, frowned. You really think that'll work? Renner's team will be expecting textbook moves. Rachel looked up. Then we'll give them something they don't expect. The siren wailed. The exercise began. They moved like shadows through the heat. The desert shimmered, wind whispering through broken windows. Every heartbeat sounded loud enough to give them away. Rachel's headset crackled with static. Then silence. Comms jammed. She raised her fist. Hold position. A distant bang split the air, followed by a hiss smoke grenade. Gray clouds erupted from the building ahead. Contact! Keller shouted. Gunfire from paintball rounds ripped through the smoke. Her team dove behind a wall. One man yelped as a round splattered against his vest. Rachel ducked, adrenaline surging. We're compromised. But something felt wrong. Too coordinated. Too personal. Through the haze, she caught a glimpse. Renner's team wasn't defending the hostage house. They were hunting her. Fall back, she ordered, motioning toward an alley. A figure burst from the smoke. Renner himself, paint rifle leveled. End of the line, Dawson, he barked. She froze for half a breath, brain calculating angles. The training weapon might shoot paint, but the humiliation of being killed on camera would follow her for weeks. He squeezed the trigger click. Empty. Rachel moved first. She dropped to one knee, swung her rifle upward, and tagged his shoulder with a burst of color. Renner cursed, ducking behind a pillar. His teammates poured in from the sides. Now she was cornered, trapped inside a half-roofed structure, dust swirling around like gunpowder smoke. Her pulse slowed. Panic would kill her faster than bullets. Rachel inhaled through her nose, exhaled slow, letting her training take over. She remembered nights studying her brother's SEAL manuals, the pages filled with notes about small unit evasion, CQB tactics, ghosting. When you're outnumbered, Ethan had written, become the noise they're chasing, not the target they hit. She unclipped 2 flashbang simulators from her vest, pulled the pins, and lobbed them in opposite directions. The bangs exploded, thunder rolling across the ruins. While Renner's squad dove for cover, Rachel sprinted through the side corridor, ducked under a collapsed beam, and slipped out the back. She moved fast but silent, every step measured. Circling behind them, she climbed a half-fallen ladder to a rooftop, sighted through her scope, and fired. Pop, pop. 2 bright splats marked the helmets of Renner's men below. Who the? Someone yelled. Renner spun, searching the smoke. She was already gone. Down a drain pipe, across the alley, through a broken doorway. She was a phantom now, every tactic precise, every movement calculated. The cameras hidden around the site captured it all, and in the monitoring tent, instructors leaned closer to the screens. Chief Harris muttered, "Where the hell did she learn that?" An assistant shrugged. "Looks like SEAL-grade maneuvering, sir." Inside the ghost town, the tables had turned. Renner's team split apart, trying to find her. She used their separation against them, tagging each from cover until only Renner remained. He realized too late he'd become the hunted. Rachel dropped behind him, muzzle aimed squarely at his back. "Bang," she said quietly. He froze, then raised his hands, jaw tight. "You happy?" "Not yet," she replied, lowering the weapon. But I'm getting there. The whistle blew end of exercise. When the dust settled, both teams were called to formation. The trainees stood coated in sweat and paint. Chief Harris looked from Renner to Rachel. Result? Renner clenched his fists. My squad's down. Hostage recovered by Dawson. The chief's brow lifted. That's a first. A perfect flank and full extraction. You improvised that, Lieutenant? Yes, sir. Using what Marine training? Rachel hesitated. No, sir. Something my brother taught me. Harris studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Noted. The men dispersed to clean their gear. Rachel sat on a low wall, exhaustion finally seeping through her adrenaline. Renner approached, his tone clipped, but not hostile. You set me up good in there. Wasn't personal, she said. Just tactics. He smirked faintly. Everything's personal out here. She met his eyes. Then maybe that's why you keep losing. He didn't answer, just walked away, boots kicking up dust. Later, in the debrief room, footage from helmet cams played on a large screen. The candidates watched as Rachel vanished into smoke, reappeared behind Renner's flank, and executed textbook close-quarters maneuvers. The room went silent when the final bang echoed through the speakers. Harris folded his arms. Take notes, gentlemen. That's composure under pressure. She didn't outmuscle you. She outthought you. Rachel sat still, uncomfortable with the spotlight, but inside her chest burned quiet pride. For the first time since arriving, she felt seen not as the woman trainee, but as a soldier who had earned her ground. When the meeting broke, Keller clapped her on the shoulder. Hell of a move, ma'am. Didn't think anyone could make Renner look slow. Neither did I, she said with a small grin. Outside, twilight painted the desert in gold. The wind was cool now, carrying the smell of dust and gun oil. Rachel looked toward the horizon, where the sun sank behind the dunes. For a fleeting moment, she let herself breathe, muscles trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. Then a new thought hit her. This victory wouldn't make things easier. It would make her a target. Renner's pride was wounded, and men like him didn't forget. As night fell, she cleaned her weapon under the pale light of the barracks. The others joked quietly, some offering nods of acknowledgement. She felt the change in the air subtle, but real. Respect wasn't given here. It was taken, one mission at a time. She placed her rifle down, stared at her reflection in the metal casing, and whispered under her breath, "You're not done yet." Because somewhere beyond the next sunrise, another test was waiting, one that wouldn't be part of any scripted exercise. And Rachel Dawson was ready to face it. The next morning, the desert camp buzzed with a different kind of energy. Word of Rachel Dawson's performance had spread faster than wildfire through dry grass. In the mess hall, candidates whispered about her tactics, the instructor's praise, and the moment she outmaneuvered Blake Renner, the man most expected to top the class. But admiration was a fragile thing in this world. Pride and ego had their own way of striking back. Rachel walked through the tent corridor, tray in hand, ignoring the eyes that followed her. Some nodded with quiet respect. Others simply glared. When she sat down, Keller slid across from her, lowering his voice. "Renner's crew isn't happy," he warned. "They say you had inside intel on the range layout." Rachel looked up, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Inside intel? You think I cheated?" Keller shrugged. "I don't, but some people don't like losing to someone who makes them question themselves." She set her tray aside. "Then that's their problem." Keller nodded, but his gaze flicked toward the entrance. "Their problem might become yours." Renner and two of his teammates walked in. They passed her table, slowed just enough for him to mutter, "Nice of the instructors to give you a movie script to play, Dawson." Too bad the real thing won't be choreographed. Rachel didn't respond. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. But inside, a low burn started in her chest. She'd seen that kind of man before, one who mistook arrogance for strength, who thought respect could be earned only by intimidation. Later that afternoon, during weapons maintenance, Chief Harris called her into his office. The air conditioning hummed, and a stack of after-action reports lay on his desk. "Dawson," he said without looking up, "you made quite an impression out there yesterday." "Thank you, sir." He leaned back, folding his hands. Impression can cut both ways. You rattled Renner's confidence, and his team's morale's dropping. That's not good for a unit cohesion. Rachel straightened. "With respect, sir, I followed every protocol. I can't control how someone reacts to losing." A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. "Fair point. But I need you to understand something. Talent without humility makes enemies. Strategy without leadership creates division. You've proven you can fight. Now I want to see if you can lead." He slid a folder toward her. "New assignment. Team integration exercise. You'll command a mixed squad including Renner. Mission briefing at 05:00. Oh, Rachel blinked. "Sir, with him on my team. That's the test, Lieutenant. Welcome to leadership." At dawn, the squad assembled at the airfield. The mission, search and rescue under simulated hostile fire, conducted in the forested outskirts north of San Diego. The terrain was colder, quieter, more unpredictable. As Rachel reviewed her map, Renner stood off to the side, arms crossed. When she gathered the team for briefing, his smirk returned. "You heard the boss. Dawson's running the show," he said. "Guess we'll see if her smoke tricks work in real terrain." Rachel ignored him, unfolding the map on the hood of the Humvee. "Listen up. We'll split into 2 fire teams. Alpha Renner, Keller, Ruiz. Bravo me, Davis, Lynn. Objective is the downed pilot beacon, 2 clicks north. Maintain radio silence until contact. Clear?" Everyone nodded except Renner, who muttered something under his breath. Rachel shot him a look that said enough. They deployed in staggered formation, weaving through the thick forest. The morning fog clung to the ground like low smoke. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of boots, the click of safeties, the distant call of a hawk. Halfway to the beacon, the crack of simulated gunfire erupted from the ridge. Paint rounds splattered bark inches from their heads. "Contact front." Keller shouted. "Take cover." Rachel ordered, diving behind a log. Renner barked a counter-command. "Flank left." "Push through." "No." Rachel snapped. "That's a trap. They're drawing us uphill." He glared. "Or maybe they're drawing you off your plan." Before she could stop him, he motioned to his team and moved left through the undergrowth. Keller hesitated, torn between orders. Rachel made a quick decision. Bravo team circle east, cut them off from below. Minutes later, the forest exploded with shouts and gunfire. Rachel's plan worked. By predicting the ambush pattern, she looped around and neutralized the enemy squad from behind. But Renner's impulsive move had cost him 2 of his men were tagged out. When they regrouped, Renner's face was dark with sweat and frustration. "You think that stunt makes you right?" he demanded. "It's not about being right," Rachel replied evenly. "It's about keeping the team alive." He took a step closer. "You think you're better than me because you outsmarted a few paint rounds?" Her jaw tightened. "No, I think I learned something you haven't. Discipline beats ego." For a moment, the forest went still, except for the whisper of wind through pine needles. Then Renner turned away, muttering, "We'll see about that." They found the beacon an hour later, mission accomplished, but the tension hung heavy. Back at base, the instructors reviewed their footage. Chief Harris's expression was unreadable as he watched the replay Renner breaking formation, Rachel adapting and saving the mission. He turned off the monitor. "Dawson, report to my office." She arrived still covered in mud. Harris leaned against his desk. "You handled yourself well? Renner's not making it easy for you." "Sir, he doesn't have to like me. He just has to follow orders." He studied her for a long moment. "You know what the hardest part of leadership is? Not winning. It's bringing everyone with you, even the ones who want you to fail." Rachel exhaled. "I'll keep trying, sir." He nodded. "Good, because next week, we up the stakes. Real environment, real pressure. You'll lead an extraction in the field overnight survival and live navigation drills." Her pulse quickened. This was it, the phase that separated those who could strategize from those who could survive. When she left the office, she found Renner waiting outside. His expression wasn't smug this time, just cold. "You made your point in the forest," he said. "But don't think this makes you untouchable. Out there, it's not about tactics. It's about instincts. And mine are better." Rachel met his stare. "Maybe, but instincts without control are just noise." He walked away without replying. That night, as the lights went out across camp, Rachel sat on the barrack steps, looking up at the stars. The wind carried faint echoes of laughter and distant radio chatter. She thought of Ethan, her brother, how he used to say that real strength wasn't proven in the fight, but in how one carried themselves afterward. She wondered what he'd say now. Would he be proud? Or would he warn her that success could isolate as easily as failure? Somewhere behind her, Keller's voice broke the silence. "You did good today. Even if he can't see it?" Rachel smiled faintly. "He doesn't have to. I didn't come here for him. Then why did you?" She looked back toward the dark tree line where the training field lay. "Because I promised someone I'd never quit again." Keller didn't press further. He simply nodded and walked away, leaving her alone under the endless California night. The desert had tested her strength. The forest had tested her command. But what came next, the live survival drill, would test her heart. And for the first time, Rachel Dawson wasn't sure if tactics alone would be enough. The night air at Camp Silver Ridge carried the sharp bite of mountain cold. The candidates stood assembled under floodlights, gear loaded, weapons checked. They had been briefed only moments earlier. A 48-hour survival and extraction drill through the Sierra foothills. No vehicles, no outside support. Only what they could carry and what they could remember. Rachel Dawson adjusted her pack straps and glanced across the formation. Renner was there, arms crossed, eyes cold and calculating. The tension between them had grown quieter, but heavier, like an unspoken rivalry waiting for a spark. Chief Harris walked the line, his voice cutting through the dark. "You'll be dropped in separate zones, pairs only. Locate the extraction beacon. Navigate, survive, and don't get caught by the intercept team. They've been told to make you fail." He paused in front of Rachel. "Dawson, you're with Renner." A ripple went through the line. Keller's eyes widened. Rachel's stomach sank. Harris's gaze didn't waver. "You two proved you can't coexist. Time to find out if you can cooperate." Renner muttered under his breath. "Great. Babysitting duty." Rachel didn't answer. She was already focusing on the map, the coordinates glowing under her flashlight. At 2,300 hours, helicopters thundered into the sky. One by one, candidates rappelled down into the wild. When it was their turn, Rachel and Renner descended into total darkness, their boots sinking into damp leaves. The roar of the rotors faded into the distance. Silence. The forest was alive with night sounds, crickets, wind, the occasional crack of twigs. The kind of silence that made every breath sound too loud. Rachel unfolded her compass. "We head northeast. Beacon's roughly 14 clicks from here. Renner adjusted his rifle sling. You sure? Could be a decoy coordinate. Only one way to find out, she said. They moved through the dense underbrush, flashlights off, relying on moonlight filtering through the trees. Hours passed in tense quiet. Occasionally, Renner would murmur a direction, but he followed her lead reluctantly. By dawn, fatigue began to set in. They reached a stream, refilled canteens, and ate in silence. The exercise was designed to simulate high-stress combat evasion, but everything felt too quiet. No intercept team, no drones, no signs of pursuit. Renner frowned. You notice that? Rachel nodded. Yeah, either we're really good, or they're waiting for us to get comfortable. She was right. An hour later, while crossing a ravine, gunfire erupted from the ridge. Paint rounds whistled past. Rachel dove behind a boulder, shouting, "Down!" Renner rolled beside her, cursing. They're closer than I thought. Rachel peered over the edge. 3 shooters moving fast. They're flanking left. Then let's run right. No, she said sharply. That's downhill toward the valley too exposed. Renner growled. Then what's your genius move? Rachel's eyes flicked to a fallen log across the ravine. We cross there. Use the stream as cover. Go. They sprinted, splashing through shallow water as rounds spattered around them. Rachel grabbed the log and swung across, boots slipping on moss. Renner followed, landing hard on the opposite bank. They ducked under their eyes, breathing hard. The gunfire stopped. Think we lost them? He asked. Not a chance. They'll track footprints. We need to double back and mislead them. Renner looked skeptical, but followed her lead. She led them into a narrow creek bed, walked upstream for several hundred meters, then veered sharply east. The trick one her brother had taught her was to let water erase your trail. Hours later, when they finally stopped to rest, Renner sat against a tree, watching her. You've got a bag full of tricks. You always plan this far ahead? Rachel shrugged. Planning's what keeps you alive. He smirked. You know, if you weren't so damn uptight, you'd almost be impressive. She didn't respond. The truth was, she'd begun to see cracks in Renner's arrogance, a quiet edge of respect beneath his jabs. But before she could think about it, something in the distance broke her train of thought. A scream. It echoed. Faintly through the trees, one of the other candidates, somewhere northwest. Then silence again. Rachel's instincts flared. That wasn't simulation. Renner frowned. Could have been an audio scare tactic. She shook her head. No, that was real fear. Without waiting, she grabbed her pack and started running toward the sound. Dawson, wait, Renner shouted, then cursed and followed. They moved fast through the trees until they reached a clearing and froze. Smoke rose from a crashed training drone, its rotor twisted, sparks flickering from broken panels. Beside it, a young trainee, Lynn, was on the ground clutching his leg. A metal shard was embedded deep in his thigh. Rachel dropped beside him. It's okay. You're fine. Just stay still. Renner checked the wound. That's bad. He's losing blood fast. Rachel tore open her kit, pulling out a field dressing. Help me apply pressure. They worked in sync, Renner holding the wound, Rachel tying the tourniquet tight until Lynn groaned in pain. This isn't supposed to happen, Renner muttered. That drone shouldn't have crashed. Rachel looked at the sky. No choppers, no instructors, no movement. The radio on Lynn's vest was cracked, wires exposed. She tried hers. Static. Signal's dead, she said. We're on our own. Renner glanced around. We need extraction. Rachel shook her head. Nearest beacon's still 10 clicks east. We can't carry him that far. She thought fast. We build a shelter, stabilize him, and signal with smoke. That's what they'd expect us to do, right? Renner hesitated. Unless the intercept team finds us first. They worked quickly, Rachel. Gathered branches, Renner tore open his emergency foil blanket for insulation. Lynn drifted in and out of consciousness. By late afternoon, the wind picked up, scattering ash from the crashed drone. Rachel kept checking her compass, calculating the sun's angle. "We've got maybe 2 hours of light left." Renner wiped sweat from his brow. "So what's the plan? Sit here and hope?" She met his eyes. "You take first watch. I'll head up the ridge and try to get a signal." He started to argue, but saw the look on her face. "Fine, don't take too long." Rachel climbed the slope, moving through thick brush until she reached a high ledge. She raised the radio again, scanning frequencies. Nothing but static, then crackling. A faint voice. "Silver Ridge command copy. If you can hear unplanned drone malfunction, multiple casualties, weatherfront incoming teams advised to regroup." Rachel froze. A storm. Lightning flashed in the distance. She turned, eyes wide, and sprinted downhill. "Renner, storm's moving in fast. We need shelter now." Rain began to hammer through the canopy, soaking them instantly. The wind howled like an engine roar, tearing branches free. Renner secured the makeshift roof over Lynn, shouting over the noise. "He's fading." Rachel knelt, checking Lynn's pulse weak, but there. "We'll keep him warm. The storm will pass." Thunder boomed, shaking the ground. In that moment, the exercise was no longer about scores or ranks. It was survival, real, raw, and unpredictable. Renner met her eyes, his voice lower now. "You think they know we're out here?" Rachel swallowed hard. "I think we're on our own until the storm clears." They sat through the night, shielding Lynn between them, listening to the endless roar of wind and rain. For the first time, there was no rivalry, no pride. Just two soldiers, cold, wet, and human, doing everything they could to keep someone alive. By dawn, the storm had passed. Smoke curled from the drone wreck, and the first rays of sunlight broke through. Renner stirred, eyes bloodshot. "You didn't sleep?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Didn't want to." He studied her for a long moment. "You know, I misjudged you. Most people do," she said softly. In the distance, a faint hum rose, the sound of helicopter blades. They scrambled out of the shelter, waving smoke markers until the chopper appeared overhead. As they lifted off, Rachel looked down at the forest below, the shattered drone, the muddy footprints, the remnants of a storm that had tested more than her strength. It had tested her heart. And somewhere inside, she realized the line between training and real combat had vanished long ago. The roar of the helicopter faded into silence as it touched down at Camp Silver Ridge. Medics rushed forward, pulling Lynn from the stretcher, while Rachel and Renner staggered out behind him, mud-streaked, drenched, and hollow-eyed. Chief Harris was already waiting. His normally calm face was unreadable, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "What the hell happened out there?" he demanded over the noise. Rachel saluted sharply. "Sir, we found Cadet Lynn injured near a downed recon drone." It looked like a mechanical malfunction. Possibly, Harris cut her off. That drone wasn't supposed to be armed. Renner frowned. "Armed?" The chief gestured for them to follow, leading them into the operations tent. The monitors glowed with static images of their training routes, all glitched and incomplete. "We lost telemetry an hour before you radioed in," Harris said. "When we finally got partial visuals back, half the drone system logs were corrupted." Rachel's pulse quickened. "Corrupted how?" Harris exhaled. "As in someone intentionally wiped the data. And until we figure out who, this whole exercise is suspended." Renner ran a hand through his hair. "So this wasn't just an accident?" Harris didn't answer directly. "I need both of your reports by 0800. Dismissed." Back in the barracks, the silence between Rachel and Renner felt heavier than before. They sat on opposite bunks, each lost in thought. Renner finally broke the silence. You think someone hacked the drone? Rachel didn't look up. I think someone wanted that crash to happen. And we were lucky it didn't kill Lynn. Renner leaned forward. But why? None of us even had access to drone command systems. She looked at him then, eyes sharp. Unless someone did and used it. His jaw tightened. You're thinking inside job. Rachel didn't answer, but her silence said everything. At dawn, she handed in her written report and went straight to the medical unit to check on Lynn. The nurse shook her head. He's stable, but unconscious. Lost a lot of blood. He hasn't said a word since we brought him in. Rachel stood there for a long moment, staring at his pale face. Something about the crash site replayed in her mind, the way the drone's black box had been pried open. It wasn't damage from the impact. It was deliberate. She turned to leave, but stopped when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Couldn't sleep either? Renner. He looked as worn as she felt. Chief Harris called me in, he said. He's got investigators coming from HQ. Says we're under review until they figure out what happened. Rachel frowned. Under review? Why us? He gave a humorless laugh. Because we were the only ones near the crash site. Makes sense on paper. But that's insane, she said. You think I'd sabotage a drone? Not you, he replied. But someone might want it to look like you did. The words hung between them like smoke. Later that afternoon, they were summoned to the operations center again. 2 officers in gray uniforms, Internal Command Review Unit, stood waiting. The older one, Commander Ridley, spoke first. Lieutenant Dawson. Candidate Renner. Will be brief. His tone was clipped, official. Telemetry records indicate manual interference from within your training zone, approximately 1 hour before the drone crashed. Rachel crossed her arms. Meaning someone tampered with it locally. Possibly, Ridley said. Or remotely. But since you 2 were within the nearest radius, we need full cooperation. Renner scoffed. You're implying we hacked a drone mid-training? Ridley's gaze was cool. We're not implying anything. We're confirming the facts. Rachel leaned forward. Then confirm this someone nearly died. Lynn is still in a hospital bed because a drone decided to dive bomb us. You should be looking for why it malfunctioned, not who looks convenient. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. Ridley's expression didn't change. Noted. You're dismissed for now. As they left, Rachel muttered, They're fishing. Renner replied, Yeah, and we're the bait. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the training hills, the camp grew quiet. The trainees were restless, whispering rumors about the investigation. Some said Rachel had triggered the drone to score extra points. Others said Renner had overridden her orders and caused the crash. The truth didn't matter. Rumor was faster than evidence. Rachel sat alone near the obstacle course, watching the horizon burn orange. Her mind replayed everything in sharp detail, the way the drone spiraled down, the glint of its broken panel, the strange sound before impact. Something about it felt familiar. Then she remembered. During the first week of training, she'd overheard a conversation near the comm station, 2 tech officers joking about testing signal interference. She hadn't thought about it since. But what if it wasn't a joke? She stood abruptly, heading for the restricted hangar area. The guard at the gate frowned. Authorized personnel only, Lieutenant. I just need to check maintenance logs, she said. Chief's orders. The guard hesitated. You got paperwork? Rachel smiled faintly. I'll have it in 5 minutes. Or you can explain to Harris why I couldn't do my job. He sighed and waved her through. Inside, the hangar was dimly lit, rows of drones covered with tarps. She found the maintenance console, fingers flying across the keyboard. Her breath caught. One of the system logs, the crash drone's ID, showed a manual override command entered 2 hours before their drop. The access key belonged to Instructor Keller. No, it couldn't be. Keller, the one who'd supported her since day one. She double-checked the timestamps. It was there, clear as daylight. Before she could process it, footsteps echoed behind her. Curiosity can be dangerous, Lieutenant. Rachel spun around. Keller stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets. His usual easy smile was gone. You shouldn't be here, he said softly. You overrode the drone, she said. Why? He sighed. You weren't supposed to see that. The test was never meant to crash, just push the limits. Someone changed the parameters, not me. Then who? She demanded. Keller stepped closer. Look, Dawson, there's more going on here than you think. Harris wants to see what you'll do under real pressure. The whole thing the sabotage, the review, it's all part of it. She shook her head. That's insane. Lynn nearly died. I know, Keller said. And that's why I'm warning you, drop it. Someone at HQ doesn't want you to finish this program. Rachel's heart pounded. Why me? Because you embarrassed the wrong people. He turned toward the exit. Go back to your barracks. Forget what you saw. Keller. She called. But he was already gone, swallowed by the shadows. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lynn bleeding in the mud, Keller's face in the doorway, the corrupted data. By morning, she made a decision. She wasn't going to forget. Renner found her outside the mess hall, already geared up. Where are you going? To the command tent, she said. To tell Harris what I found. You sure that's smart? Smart or not, it's right. For the first time, he didn't argue. He fell in beside her as they walked through the rising sun, side by side, like uneasy allies. Inside, Chief Harris looked up from his desk. You're up early, Dawson. I found the override log, she said, sliding a printed file across his desk. It points to Keller. Harris's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. You're certain? Yes, sir. He told me someone higher up wanted the test pushed beyond limits. He wouldn't say who. Harris exhaled slowly, then pressed a button on his intercom. Lock down Keller's station now. Rachel stood still, studying him. You knew something was off, didn't you? I had suspicions, he said, but no proof until now. Renner glanced at Rachel, then back at the chief. So what happens next? Harris's gaze hardened. Next, we find out who ordered this. Outside, the camp loudspeaker crackled with static. Then a voice. All candidates to field deck immediately. This is not a drill. Rachel's pulse spiked. Renner grabbed his helmet. Guess we're not done yet. She looked out toward the training field, where dark smoke was already curling into the morning sky. Whatever this was, it wasn't training anymore. The sirens howled through Camp Silver Ridge like something alive, echoing off the steel walls and rippling across the open training fields. Rachel, Dawson, and Renner sprinted toward the commotion, the air thick with confusion. Cadets poured from their barracks, eyes wide, half-geared, and panicked. Overhead, smoke twisted into the morning sky, black, heavy, and spreading fast. The control tower's top floor was burning. Move, move, move. Chief Harris's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. All units to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Rachel's pulse thundered in her ears. She shoved through the crowd, Renner on her heels. That's the comms sector. She shouted. If that's down, they can't coordinate any of the drone systems. They rounded the corner, just as another explosion rocked the east wing. The ground trembled beneath them. Shrapnel whizzed through the air and struck a jeep nearby. Renner grabbed her arm, dragging her behind a barricade. We can't go in there without gear. Rachel's gaze snapped to a supply crate half-toppled nearby. She ripped it open and tossed him a pair of fireproof gloves. Then gear up, sailor. He gave her a look, part fear, part admiration, before nodding. Together, they dashed toward the flames. Inside, the control tower was chaos. Cables hung from the ceiling, sparks flying like fireflies. The sound of alarms mixed with the hiss of burning fuel. Rachel coughed through the smoke. The data servers, they're back here. They forced their way through a warped steel door, where rows of computers flickered in dying light. The heat was suffocating. Renner smashed a fire extinguisher against the nearest flame, clearing a path. Then Rachel saw it, an open panel at the central server rack. Someone had pulled the data drives. She froze. They wiped it. Renner turned. What? Whoever caused this didn't just start a fire, she said grimly. They're covering their tracks. A crash behind them. A figure stumbled through the smoke, face covered in soot and sweat. It was Keller. He looked dazed, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers. Rachel rushed to him. Keller, what happened? He tried to speak, his voice rasping. They found out? Harris? Isn't who you think? Then his knees buckled. She caught him as he fell, her hands shaking. Keller, stay with me. His eyes flicked up to hers, sharp for a moment, lucid. The operation, Phoenix. Harris isn't your ally. Renner knelt beside them. We need to get him out of here. But Keller gripped Rachel's wrist with surprising strength. Listen, the drone crash wasn't the beginning. It was the test before deployment. What deployment? She demanded. Keller's breathing hitched. Silver Ridge is a cover. It's not training. It's field testing for live strike integration. Rachel's heart froze. You mean they've been using us to test real combat AI? Keller nodded weakly. And now they're cleaning house. A thunderous crack split the ceiling. Debris rained down. Renner yelled, We've got to move now. They dragged Keller through the smoke toward the stairwell, stumbling down the steps as more explosions rattled the tower. When they finally burst outside, medics and fire crews swarmed the yard. Chief Harris stood at the command post, barking orders. His uniform was immaculate despite the chaos. Rachel ran straight to him. Sir, Keller's hurt, and he says you're behind this. For a brief instant, Harris's eyes flickered, cold, calculating, before he masked it with anger. That's absurd. Get him to medical, Lieutenant. But Rachel wasn't buying it. You knew this wasn't an accident, she said, voice steady but dangerous. Harris stepped closer. You're out of line. Am I? She shot back. Because Keller said Silver Ridge isn't a training facility. It's a weapons program. The surrounding soldiers hesitated, glancing between them. Harris's jaw tightened. Escort Lieutenant Dawson to holding, he ordered 2 MPs. She's disobeying command. Renner stepped in front of her. You're arresting her? After all this? This is not up for debate, Harris barked. Rachel's pulse spiked. She looked around, soldiers everywhere, smoke still curling behind them, Keller slipping into unconsciousness. She knew then, if she went quietly, she'd never leave the base alive. So she didn't. Rachel grabbed a flash grenade from the fallen supply bag and tossed it at Harris's feet. The world went white. Shouts erupted as she yanked Renner toward the hangar. They sprinted through the blinding smoke, heartbeats pounding in sync. Are you insane? Renner yelled. Yes, she gasped, but we're still breathing. They ducked into the maintenance corridor where the noise from the sirens faded slightly. Rachel leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breath. Renner's face was pale. "We just assaulted a commanding officer." "We exposed one," she corrected. "There's a difference." He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, suppose Keller's right. Silver Ridge is some secret project. What do we even do with that?" Rachel pulled the data chip from her vest pocket, the one she'd recovered from the drone days earlier. "We find proof." He stared. "That's encrypted military tech." "Then we'll decrypt it," she said. "There's a safe terminal in the old communications bunker on Ridge Point. If we can reach it before they find us, we'll know exactly what we're dealing with." Renner hesitated, then nodded. "Lead the way." They crept through the back perimeter, avoiding patrols. The base, once alive with structured discipline, was now chaos. Soldiers running, alarms blaring, the night sky glowing red. Half a mile out, the noise faded, replaced by the steady whisper of the wind over the hills. The communications bunker loomed ahead, an old, concrete relic half buried in earth. They slipped inside. Rachel set up the terminal, inserting the data chip. The screen flickered to life. Lines of encrypted code streamed across. She typed rapidly, her fingers a blur. "Come on." Renner stood watch near the doorway. "We don't have long. If Harris really is behind this, he'll send a unit." The computer beeped. "Access granted." Rachel froze. Then she opened the decrypted files, and what she saw drained the color from her face. "What is it?" Renner asked. She turned the monitor so he could see. "It's not training footage. It's targeting data from live missions. They've been using AI-driven drones to perform unauthorized strikes overseas. Silver Ridge is their testing ground." Renner stepped closer, disbelief written across his face. "They're using trainees as cover and killing civilians as test variables," she said bitterly. "Every drone crash, every malfunction, it's been a cover-up." Before they could say another word, the sound of boots echoed outside. Rachel slammed the chip into her vest pocket. "They found us." Renner grabbed his rifle, checking the chamber. "You go, I'll hold them off." "No," she said firmly. "We go together." But the door burst open before she could finish. Chief Harris stepped inside, flanked by 2 armed officers. His tone was calm, almost pitying. "You should have listened, Dawson." Rachel raised her weapon. "You're running an illegal weapons program on U.S. soil. You think no one's going to find out?" Harris smiled thinly. "No one will, because by morning, this base will be ashes." Renner fired first. Harris ducked, shouting for his men to engage. Gunfire tore through the bunker walls. Rachel dove for cover, returning fire. The smell of smoke and metal filled the air. A bullet grazed Renner's shoulder. He gritted his teeth, firing again. Rachel spotted the emergency power conduit along the wall. An idea flashed. She yanked a flare from her belt and hurled it at the panel. The impact set off a blinding burst of sparks. The lights exploded. Harris cursed. "Take them down." In the confusion, Rachel grabbed Renner's arm and pulled him toward the back exit. They burst through into the cold night, sprinting toward the tree line as alarms screamed behind them. They didn't stop until the lights of Silver Ridge were distant glimmers. Rachel collapsed against a boulder, panting. He's going to wipe it all. The base, the data, everything. Renner pressed a hand to his bleeding shoulder. "Then we make sure the truth gets out first." Rachel nodded, her jaw set. "We've got one shot left, and we're taking it." She looked back at the distant base, fire reflecting in her eyes. Silver Ridge was burning, but the fight had just begun. The forest lay in uneasy silence, the smoke from Silver Ridge fading into the pre-dawn sky. Rachel Dawson and Blake Renner pressed forward, keeping low among the pine needles and rocks. Every snap of a twig made them flinch, Every gust of wind seemed to carry the threat of discovery. Behind them, the base burned, the sirens, the gunfire, the chaos, a fading reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Ahead, the communications bunker they had discovered the previous night contained proof, enough to dismantle Harris's operation and expose the illegal drone program. Rachel's pulse was steady, her mind razor-focused. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "HQ will send reinforcements soon, but we can't wait for them. We need to broadcast this ourselves." Renner, still clutching his shoulder, gave her a grim nod. "Lead the way. I'll cover us." They reached the bunker just as the first streaks of sunlight pierced the horizon. Rachel inserted the data chip and powered up the terminal. Files flashed across the screen. Drone targeting coordinates, covert strike logs, timestamps of simulated accidents and worse. Evidence that U.S. personnel had been unknowingly used as pawns in an illegal weapons test. She exhaled sharply. This is it. If this gets out, Harris doesn't just lose his command, he faces federal prosecution. Renner crouched beside her. How do we broadcast it without getting intercepted? Rachel's mind raced. She remembered the emergency uplink system hidden behind the main server cluster, designed for remote deployment drills. If they could route the files through that, the intel would reach HQ directly. "Help me reroute it," she said. They worked in tense silence. Rachel typed commands, bypassed encrypted firewalls, rerouted signals through multiple satellites to mask the source. Sweat ran down her temple, her fingers trembling. One wrong keystroke could fry the system or alert Harris. "Done," she finally whispered. "It's sending." Renner let out a low whistle. "You just made HQ the first people to see this." Before they could celebrate, the sound of boots, heavy, determined, reverberated through the trees. Harris's voice cut through the morning air, sharp as a blade. "You really think you can run, Dawson? You've played hero long enough." Rachel's heart pounded. She grabbed her rifle, motioning for Renner to cover her flank. The clearing opened like a trap, and Harris stepped into the light, flanked by armed soldiers from the remaining base security. "You underestimated me once," she said, her voice steady. "Don't make the same mistake twice." Harris's smile was cold. "I didn't underestimate you. I merely delayed the inevitable." Renner shifted, positioning himself behind Rachel. "We've already delayed you," he said. "And this ends now." Harris barked orders. "Take them down." A firefight erupted, bullets tearing through trees and dirt. Rachel moved like a shadow, firing calculated bursts, suppressing the enemy. Renner covered the opposite flank, taking precise shots, forcing their attackers to retreat behind cover. Despite their exhaustion, they fought with the clarity of purpose born from hours of life or death survival. Every move Rachel had learned from her brother's SEAL manuals, flanking, suppressive fire, misdirection, came to life. Harris lunged toward the terminal, trying to destroy the uplink. Rachel intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. They struggled, mud and sweat mixing with the metallic tang of blood. "You won't get away with this," she yelled. Harris sneered, striking her with a gloved hand. "I already have. By the time HQ acts, you'll be labeled rogue operatives, heroes nobody remembers." She gritted her teeth, leveraging his momentum, flipping him over. Renner joined, restraining him while Rachel activated the terminal's final sequence. The uplink confirmed. Files transmitted successfully. A message from the command terminal blinked. Data received verified. Alert sent to federal oversight. Harris froze, his eyes widening as the reality hit him. No. Before he could react, backup arrived, helicopter blades slicing the air. Federal agents, identifiable by their marked jackets and weapons, poured into the clearing, surrounding the chaos. Harris's men froze, realizing they were outmatched. Rachel stepped back, her chest heaving. Renner lowered his rifle, shaking his head. We did it. The agents moved in, cuffing Harris and his cohorts. The man who had threatened to burn the program into secrecy was led away, his rage impotent. Rachel exhaled, her body trembling with the release of tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Renner clapped her on the shoulder. Never thought I'd say this, Dawson, but I'm glad you were on my side. She allowed herself a faint smile. You weren't so bad yourself. For someone who tried to undermine me every step of the way. Keller, recovered and bandaged, emerged from the medics. His eyes were weary but grateful. You actually pulled it off, he said softly. Rachel shook her head. We pulled it off. All of us. In the days that followed, Silver Ridge became the center of a federal investigation. News reports confirmed the illegal drone testing, the exploitation of trainees, and the swift removal of Harris from command. Rachel and Renner were debriefed multiple times, their heroics noted, but classified in certain channels, due to the sensitive nature of the operation. For Rachel, there was no fanfare, no medals handed in a ceremony, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had done the right thing. The weight of lives saved, the injustice exposed, and the truth delivered carried a weight heavier than any medal could convey. She sat in a quiet room, looking out over the mountains, the wind carrying the scent of pine and rain. Renner joined her silently, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You ever think about leaving all this behind? He asked. Rachel took a slow sip. Sometimes. But then I remember. People like Harris always exist. And someone has to stop them. Renner nodded, his tone softer now. Guess we make a good team after all. She chuckled. Reluctantly, you mean? He grinned. Always? They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the sun rise over the foothills. A new day, a new beginning, not just for them, but for the program they had dismantled. Rachel Dawson knew the fight wasn't over. There would always be challenges, missions, and tests. But for the first time, she felt something she hadn't before, that no matter the odds, courage, intelligence, and teamwork could change the course of events, even in a world designed to break you. As helicopters and agents moved in the distance, she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. She had survived the trials at Silver Ridge, faced corruption, betrayal, and danger, and emerged not only alive, but victorious. And somewhere deep inside, Rachel Dawson smiled, knowing she had truly earned the title she had worked for. Not just a trainee, not just a soldier, but a guardian of justice. The forest was silent again, the smoke dissipating into the morning sky. And Rachel, standing with Renner and Keller beside her, felt the full weight of survival, leadership, and truth, and the certainty that no challenge would ever break her again.